Now, look,
What is that?
it's my Scientology movie by Louis III. What do you think about the fact that people are still making these films? Do you care? Do you have a view on it at all?
No, you know what? It's something that has helped me incredibly in my life.
Yeah.
And I've been a Scientologist for over 30 years,
Yeah.
and it's something that, as you know, without it, I wouldn't be where I am.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise is completely insane. You don't hear about it much anymore, but the man's been heavily involved with the Church of Scientology, a well-documented cult, and has been embroiled in many personal controversies over the years. But you know what else that insanity leads to? Passion. In our case, passion for filmmaking, because here we are 30 years after the start of the Mission Impossible film series, a series that I somehow haven't seen yet, and Tom Cruise at 60 years old is doing crazier stunts than ever before. But since this iconic film series is coming to a close, I thought now would be the best time to cruise right into viewing them. My mission, which I do choose to accept, is to watch all the Mission Impossible films for the first time, give them all super subjective ratings and rankings that aren't serious at all, throw them on a tier list, and make this video that you're watching. So enough rambling in this intro, it's time for me to ramble about these movies. To begin our series of impossible missions, we have Mission Impossible from 1996. This series jumps right into things with the secret agent group IMF, which literally stands for Impossible Mission Force. We're having a good time doing lots of secret agent things until they're all murdered, except for Ethan Hunt, who's played by the world's most famous Scientologist Tom Cruise, but he's framed as being a mole inside the organization trying to release the real names of all the other secret agents. So in order to clear his name, Ethan Hunt assembles a team of other blacklisted agents and specialists in order to save the day, but it turns out 2 of them are actually bad guys working for the true mole, who is none other than his old boss, who actually survived. And it turns out his old boss, who used to be, you know, like a hotshot IMF guy, he turned evil because he wants money, I guess. It's not really clear, but hey, Ethan stops him. He gets offered another mission, and then the movie just kind of ends. Now, I know that description of the film sounds kind of cynical, but I actually really enjoyed it. It was fun watching for the first time and seeing the ways that it influenced so many other pop culture references and spy genre stuff throughout all the years, from its iconic theme to different gadgets and the type of missions that they do. It almost feels like a reverse spy movie at times, as Ethan is on the run from all the other spies and secret agents. I also appreciated the slower pace and the focus on the meticulous setup of missions over big action shootouts, as most of these action movies would opt for, but nevertheless, the set pieces are satisfying to watch play out, and suspenseful when things inevitably go wrong, as well as suspenseful watching the mystery behind who the mole is unfold. That being said, I do think there are some things in the film that either aren't developed enough or feel a bit rushed, which is mainly the twists surrounding the bad guys and all that, and some character relationships. The final set piece as well and the ending itself are kind of go really fast-paced and are rather abrupt. I think it's a good start to the franchise, and overall a good film in its own, so I'm going to say it's good. And I think a safe place to put this one would be an A tier. I think it's good. It kind of falls flat towards the end, but it's still good. 4 years later, Ethan Hunt is back in Mission Impossible 2. So I guess the missions are pretty possible because there's another one of them. Anyway, Ethan Hunt is back, and he's here this time to stop an ex-IMF agent who conveniently knows all of Tom Cruise's tactics. I guess they met each other in between films. This guy just comes out of nowhere and is always one step ahead. His plan is to release a virus that will kill a bunch of people so that he can make money from the demand for a cure for that virus. And that is the extent of the plot in this film. Now, while the plot isn't interesting, I would say the making of the movie is. It instantly has a completely different vibe from the original, swapping the slow-paced nature of the original for over-the-top action. This is due to the change in director from Brian De Palma of the first one to John Woo here, who's directed many iconic Hong Kong action films. It's also noticeable in the film's rock soundtrack as opposed to the more orchestral one in the first one, as well as a number of absurd stunts that Tom Cruise insists on pulling off, which will only get crazier as things goes on. There's just insane car chases, people jumping off of motorcycles at each other, backflips, front flips, slow-mo explosions with doves flying around, truly bizarre dialogue, and just so many disguises that it starts to feel like a parody of Mission Impossible. And look, I enjoy cheese, but this movie is just too cheesy at times. I'm often cringing at what's going on. At the very least, it's different from the first one, and I always appreciate when sequels do something different so it's not repetitive. But I wouldn't really say it was good, and it's hard to say without, showing you the entire movie here. But I'm going to say this movie is meh, and I'm going to put it down in C tier. It's enjoyable, but it's not very good. Also, Anthony Hopkins shows up for like 2 scenes and is never seen again. It's weird. A movie like Mission Impossible 2 would kill most other franchises, but Tom Cruise has that star power, and that brings us to Mission Impossible 3, directed by J.J. Abrams, released in 2006, all 10 years after the first film. Ethan Hunt, he's now retired, and he's happily engaged to his fiancée Julia, not whoever the love interest was in the last movie, but he gets wrapped into a plot to stop this evil bad guy Davian from doing evil black market stuff, and is of course wrapped into some government conspiracies as well as coming out of retirement, putting a new team together, having to clear his name and save the day. I think there is a significant improvement over the second film in just about every way with this one here. It looks better, the action is better, it's more suspenseful, it recaptures the espionage element of the first film by actually showing how their gadgets and tactics work instead of just talking about them and doing crazy flips and slow-mo stuff. I also think it has a more poignant story than whatever the last one was. Like, Ethan Hunt is actually a character in this film, which is kind of rare for the franchise, that he actually has something to do outside of just completing a mission, all that stuff with his wife and everything. But there are some really cool action scenes and stunts as well. It has a distinct feeling to the other two. Each one of these 3 films, the first 3 Mission Impossible movies, have their own feel, and I feel like the feeling of this movie is much darker, much grittier, and much higher emotional stakes than the other movies, even the first one. I don't really have a lot of thoughts on this film in particular, but I really do think it's great. I liked it more than the other 2. I think it has some great action, a good story, the best villain in the series by far, and I think it was really well paced, some really tense action scenes. I would honestly put this movie in S tier. It was a pretty wild ride from start to finish, and I know this is a controversial take ranking the movie this high, but I actually really enjoyed Mission Impossible 3. With the first 3 films out of the way, it's time for the series to enter franchise mode, and that's where we get Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. It's a really cool name, because Ethan Hunt is really cool. And speaking of Ethan Hunt, even though he had a happy ending in the last movie, he's back in the game, again. And he and his ragtag crew, they have to go rogue, again, in their mission to stop the bad guy from unleashing a weapon that'll threaten the world, again. This time, nuclear war, and a dastardly plot involving the US and Russia, which is kind of odd because this is some really high stakes for a movie that takes a far more humorous tone than the others. But that's about where the similarities and differences begin and end. And unfortunately, one of my main criticisms of this movie, it's not so much a criticism, but it's more just so the fact that the last 3 movies were all so distinct from one another and they kept things fresh. And this one feels like it's not really trying to do anything new. I think it's a good movie. It's nice direction from Brad Bird. I think it's funny at times, even though sometimes the humor can be heavy-handed. And again, all the action and stunts and everything is great, but I don't think the story does anything interesting. The villain is completely forgettable. Ethan Hunt, I don't like that they undid his happy ending. He's given really nothing to do story or character-wise in this film, besides Tom Cruise just doing insane stunts where he's risking his life. At least Jeremy Renner is in this, and he's given more to do than the entire MCU, but I don't think the story or characters or any of that stuff is really memorable at all. I also didn't really feel much of the tension or anything, but I think the movie is good. Again, great action, visuals, all that stuff. I'm going to put it in A tier. Probably put this above the first Mission Impossible because I do think the action and stunts and everything is just that good that it makes for a more entertaining film at the end of the day. But I don't think it's the best Mission Impossible either. We're now in the second half of the Mission Impossible series, and this marks the takeover by Christopher McQuarrie, the director of this series now, even though Tom Cruise is in complete creative control. And if it wasn't bad enough that he's constantly going rogue, there's an entire rogue nation. So the IMF, the Impossible Mission Force, they've been disbanded, and they've been rolled into the CIA. So now Ethan Hunt, he's on the run, and he's believed to be you know, it's the same thing. It's the same plot. It's like the third movie in a row now where they've done this exact same thing, and it's just kind of getting old. But it does pick up when the action starts picking up, which is the reason that you're here to watch these movies anyway. But we do get new villains, the Syndicate, who are rogue IMF agents, former IMF agents, whatever. They're really boring. I do think this film has a more serious tone, which I think is better and more in line with the series overall. Which also helped with bringing back some of the tension that the last movie lacked. There's some returning characters here, which are pretty cool. The new character, Ilsa Faust, being a match for Ethan Hunt, that's really cool because, you know, Tom Cruise is kind of just the chosen one in these movies. So much so to the point that Alec Baldwin's character describes Ethan Hunt in this film as the living manifestation of destiny. That should give you a pretty clear idea of how the series views its main character, you know, whose main actor who plays Ethan Hunt also happens to be the main producer of the franchise with ties to Scientology. So that's something.
Isn't that attempted manslaughter? You just turn a guy's oxygen off?
But yeah, I would say this is the same as Ghost Protocol. I think this one is good. There are things that I think this did better, things I think the other one did better, but mostly the fact that it's got a pretty bad story and some pretty good action. And just like the last one, I'll put it in A tier. Honestly, I think they're pretty interchangeable. Can you believe this poster doesn't have Tom Cruise's name as big as the title on it? It's crazy. It's almost like there's other people in these movies, but yeah, it's Mission Impossible Fallout. A direct sequel, which is something new for this franchise. A direct sequel 2 years after Ethan Hunt has destroyed the Syndicate, and now their remnants have formed into a new, equally over-the-top group named the Apostles, who threaten the world with nuclear destruction, just like some other plots in these films, to bring about a new age, which forces Ethan to confront his past, sort of, and put an end to their scheme. And thank God he hasn't gone rogue again. He does this mostly legit this time, which I appreciate. Now, while I have criticized a lot of these films for being too similar stylistically and repeating a lot of the same plot points over and over again, it may sound a little bit hypocritical here, but I do like that they actually do a good job tying together the narrative of all the films, all the way back even to the first movie, as well as the fact that most of the fun side characters are back. Henry Cavill is a great foil to Tom Cruise. I also think that the action, the stakes, and the pacing in this are far better than the last two. It's probably the most suspenseful of the bunch, too, as Ethan, he also has something to do as a character in questioning why he does what he does, sort of. The people that he puts in danger, and the extent he's willing to go to complete his missions. Felt like a huge step up from the previous film, and that's pretty noteworthy given that this is the 6th film in the franchise that's somehow getting better as it goes on. And it even follows up on Ethan's wife from the end of Mission Impossible 3. They brought her back. She was in the end of Ghost Protocol. Sorry, spoilers. Look, I'm not showing literally everything from these movies. I can't do that. This is just me rambling about them. If you want to watch the films for yourself, go ahead and do that. But yeah, I'm going to say this one is great. I liked it more than the past two films, and honestly, I think this is the best Mission Impossible movie. It's firing on all cylinders. It's got all the tropes back. It ties all the narratives together. It's got a great final battle, and it would be a good stopping point for the franchise, a good finale if they didn't decide to do the next two movies. It's time for the 2-part finale of the Mission Impossible series with Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, a very long title, and also the next one isn't called Dead Reckoning Part 2, so this is a very awkward title for this movie. But anyway, Ethan Hunt, and even some characters who've been inexplicably missing from the series until now, from like all the way back in the first movie, they're back for his most dangerous mission yet, which they say pretty much every time, in which he has to go rogue, which he does almost every time, to stop an evil sentient AI called the Entity, which actually is something different, and is manipulating information and technology to spread chaos across the globe. But to stop this evil AI, which may or may not be symbolic of the death of the film industry and art and all that, Ethan's got to put his team together, including some newcomers, and also unceremoniously losing others as well, some fan-favorite characters, while confronting his past from before the IMF, except they don't explore it really at all. When people said the Mission Impossible series gets better with each film, I was a little caught off guard by the fact that this one is nowhere near as good as the past couple of entries. First of all, things feel really dragged out. And this all could have just been one movie, by the way, this and the next one, which is all made even worse by the fact that this is nearly 3 hours long. There is so much exposition in this for a series like this where it's never been its strong suit, and it is so heavy-handed with very cliche, often cringeworthy dialogue that it quite frankly thinks its audience is stupid, spelling everything out constantly, characters always repeating themselves. I think this also results in the acting suffering as well because the material they have to work with is just not good and everybody feels like they're just trying to deliver one-liners or poorly implemented biblical quotes, which I hope aren't related to Scientology. I don't know. Look, something just felt off about this movie. I get that it was made during COVID, but the writing just isn't here. But I will say, you know, at the very least, it still has super fun action and creative set pieces and some fun side characters. So at the end of the day, I will say this movie is okay. It is entertaining at times. It has good moments. It's got some cool action stuff. But it is way too long, way too much exposition that's just needless, and it's just not great. So I'm going to say it's okay, and I'm going to put it in B tier. It's time for the final movie in the Mission Impossible series, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. It's a very over-the-top title, but guys, this is it. This is the finale. They'll probably make another one in like 10 years. But anyway, the world is in complete shambles, with chaos in the streets, martial law put in place across the world's biggest superpowers, and the entire planet literally days away from nuclear destruction by their own means. We've done this before, but hey, you know what else we're doing again? Ethan Hunt putting his team together, doing another impossible mission to save the world, but this time the stakes are somehow even higher. And as the title says, you know, this is the finale to the 30-year film franchise, and unfortunately, it is far from the best. Now, while I did find the pacing better than the last one overall, it does have a very awkward opening, stuffed with so much recap from the previous movie that straight up just doesn't respect the audience's intelligence. In fact, there are so many flashbacks to previous films throughout this movie that it's just unreal, including flashbacks to scenes in this very same movie that sometimes show what happened only minutes prior. That's probably part of why the movie is 3 hours long. Now, look, while it isn't as crazy with exposition as the last film, there is a lot of this movie dedicated to showing that Ethan Hunt is this pretty much like savior of the world who can do no wrong, but also one who lacks any moral complexity at all, which is very weird when they introduce the idea that he had a criminal past in the last film and they do nothing with it. But anyway, just like the other films, they're constantly explaining how dangerous things are. There's some really crazy set pieces that's actually more reminiscent of the thriller-like tone of the first film, oftentimes bordering on horror rather than the higher quantity of action in some of the other films. Also, all the religious symbolism with Ethan Hunt literally being called the Chosen One and the magic key being like a cross and the entity and Gabriel. It's like there's a lot of weird religious stuff in this, which it feels weird when you think about Scientology and all that anyway. But I still thought the tension was high. The action was top-notch. It was thoroughly entertaining at times. And yeah, I mean, the ending of the film, you know, I actually think is pretty good. It's left open-ended, but I think it fits the style and tone of the series. While I did enjoy the series, I don't know how many more the world is ending. Ethan Hunt has gone rogue. No one believes him, even though he is right every single time. They'll figure it out. I have left in me. I certainly like this one more than the last, but I still think it's just okay. The story is quite bad, to be honest, but it was really entertaining at times too. I've got my problems with Tom Cruise, but I can't deny the hard work and passion that he puts into things, and the hundreds, if not thousands, of other people who made this film possible. And yeah, it's also going to go in B tier. Now, I know in this video I gave most of the movies the same extremely subjective score of just good, but you know what that means? It means this is a consistently high-quality franchise. Tom Cruise may be a bit out there, to say the least, but he knows how to make an entertaining movie. Sure, at the end of the day, you know these missions are in fact possible, given how they always solve them, and there's like 8 of these movies, but even the worst of them is still pretty entertaining. They don't have the best characters, they don't have the best plots, but I think the series does a good job of showing the other side of the medium of film, the side that provides an entertaining visual experience. These are some of the wildest practical stunts performed in movies, and I'm glad I decided to watch it all because I greatly enjoyed them. But those are all my thoughts on Mission Impossible. What did you think of these movies? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you all next time. That is, if you choose to accept watching my next video. Get it? I referenced the thing from the movie. I'm so funny. Anyway, that's it. Yeah, bye. See ya.